The 1980s gave us teen comedies filled with malls, mixtapes, and more bad life lessons than any school counselor could ever manage. These movies felt like secret guides to being a teenager. But time hasn't treated them well. What once seemed funny now feels messy, embarrassing, or just plain weird. Before all the copycats showed up, one movie captured teenage awkwardness so directly that it became the model for the rest. Fast Times at Ridgemont High tells the story of teenagers at a Southern California high school trying to figure out sex, love, and the overall weirdness of growing up. Stacey Hamilton, played by Jennifer Jason Leigh, experiments with older men, while her shy friend Mark Ratner can barely get the courage to even hold her hand. And at the same time, Jeff Spicoli, the stoner surfer played by Sean Penn, became a symbol for his generation, floating through every scene in a haze of totally awesome. The film presents itself as a teen comedy, but sneaks in deeper moments, like Stacey's quietly shown abortion, or the locker room fantasy that made Phoebe Cates famous, stepping out of a pool in slow motion, a moment that went on to define how 80s movies showed teenage desire.
For a person so young, was that a difficult decision to make that you'd say, okay, I'll do this now?
Nope.
Really?
It was fun. It was. That scene actually was fun. Paradise, there was a lot of scenes that were uncomfortable.
You were nude in that film also?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, at 17, that seems like it would even be more of a difficult decision to make.
That was more difficult, but with Fast Times, it was justified, and it was very in character, and it was fun.
The film's realism came from Cameron Crowe, who had secretly attended a real high school to collect stories for the book it's based on, which explains why the humor always feels true to life. On set, Penn refused to answer to his real name, asking everyone to call him Spicoli, and even ordered pizza during a scene, a prank that made it into the final movie. Judge Reinhold later admitted that filming his embarrassing bathroom fantasy was the most awkward day of his career. What still stands strong decades later is not just the humor, but the way the movie showed teenage life without pretending it was prettier than it was. It's funny, painful, and uncomfortably honest all at once. Adventures in Babysitting begins with Chris Parker, played by Elizabeth Shue, expecting a calm night of movies and popcorn, only to be pulled into one of the craziest nights in Chicago when her best friend calls for help from a downtown bus station. What follows is a chain of disasters: a flat tire on the freeway, a run-in with car thieves, a subway gang fight, and the famous moment where Chris and the kids end up on stage in a blues club, forced to sing their way out because Albert Collins won't let anyone leave without performing. Shue later said this was one of her favorite roles because it let her play a lead who was both brave and unsure of herself at a time when most teen comedies pushed women to the side. The blues club scene was filmed live with real Chicago locals, which gave it a spontaneous energy, though Collins himself struggled with lip-syncing and needed several tries to get it right. And the train fight where Keith Coogan's character Brad gets stabbed in the foot was actually filmed backward, a safety trick that made the awkward movements look tense and real. The movie was promoted as a simple teen comedy, but it worked because it felt like a wild city adventure, with Shue keeping everything together. Spring Break brings together two pairs of college guys in a cheap Fort Lauderdale hotel where every hallway feels like a non-stop party, and every night ends in chaos. Nelson and Adam arrive as shy outsiders, but quickly fall under the spell of two confident roommates who pull them into beach contests, hookups, and endless neon nights. The real drama comes when Nelson's stepfather, Ernest, a strict politician, sends hired men to drag him home, starting a full-on hotel riot as hundreds of drunk spring breakers fight for control. The movie looks wild because director Sean Cunningham encouraged a real party atmosphere, and both the cast and extras often blurred the line between acting and actually partying on camera. But the strangest part of the film's history came from Tammy Lynn Leppert, a young actress who appeared briefly in a bikini boxing contest and later disappeared under mysterious circumstances. After filming, she became convinced someone wanted to kill her, left a role in Scarface, and was last seen barefoot on the side of a Florida road. She was never found. What began as a carefree comedy ended up tied to one of Hollywood's eeriest unsolved mysteries.
Porky's follows a group of Florida high school boys who try to lose their virginity and instead get humiliated by Porky, the crooked owner of a sleazy strip club backed by his sheriff brother. After being cheated and dumped into a swamp, they plan revenge and destroy the place in a drunken rampage. The movie is infamous for its locker room scene, especially the body lineup, where an angry gym teacher demands a police lineup to identify a boy by his anatomy. Studio executives begged director Bob Clark to remove the scene, saying it went too far, but he refused, and it became one of the most quoted comedy moments of its time. Clark said he based the movie on his own teenage years in Florida, giving its crude jokes a nostalgic touch, and that honesty helped it connect with audiences. Critics called it trash, but test screenings got such loud laughs that Fox changed its mind, releasing what they thought would fail, only to see it earn over $100 million. What looked like a silly teen comedy ended up changing the rules for raunchy movies, setting off a wave of sex comedies. Weird Science tells the story of Gary and Wyatt, two socially awkward teens who create the perfect woman on their computer, and she actually comes to life as Lisa, a confident, magical woman who flips their lives upside down. She turns them from bullied nobodies into the stars of wild parties and teaches them to stop hiding behind fear. The movie became a cult classic because it mixed John Hughes' love for teenage struggles with wild fantasy, complete with bras on heads, computer rituals, and mutant bikers crashing living rooms. Behind the camera, Hughes cast Kelly LeBrock after she agreed almost instantly, later saying she wanted Lisa to be less of a fantasy and more of a strong figure who took control away from the boys. On set, Robert Downey Jr., long before Avengers, caused chaos with co-star Robert Russler, pulling pranks and nearly getting fired for trashing hotel rooms. And in the finale, Bill Paxter's character Chet turns into a slimy monster, a scene that forced him to wear a suffocating rubber suit so tight he nearly panicked inside. The movie was sold as a comedy, but the craziness behind the scenes became just as famous as what was on screen. Revenge of the Nerds follows two friends, Lewis and Gilbert, who get kicked out of their dorms after the jocks burn down their frat house, leaving the nerds to live in the gym until they create their own fraternity. What starts as a simple underdog story becomes a full-on fight for respect, complete with talent shows, pranks, and a belching contest that shakes the campus. The movie sold itself as silly fun, but filming turned into a real party. Shot at the University of Arizona, school officials worried about how it made Greek life look, but the set soon became what the cast called a real fraternity, filled with beer, pizza, and constant pranks. Some of the funniest moments weren't scripted, like Booger's weird card trick, which was made up on the spot and had everyone laughing too hard to stop. The famous belch came from sound designers mixing animal noises, including, rumors say, a camel, because Curtis Armstrong couldn't burp on cue. Years later, the fake nerd fraternity from Revenge of the Nerds became a real one at the University of Connecticut, proving that sometimes movie jokes escape the screen and become real life. The Last American Virgin looks like a normal teen sex comedy at first, with three friends chasing girls, messing up, and delivering pizzas. But what makes it stand out is how painfully real it becomes. Gary falls in love with Karen, only to see her choose his best friend Rick. When Rick abandons her after she gets pregnant, Gary pays for her abortion, helps her recover, and finally admits his love, only to find her back with Rick at her birthday party. The movie ends with Gary walking away heartbroken, shocking audiences who expected a happy ending. Director Boaz Davidson refused to change it because it was based on his real teenage life, and that honesty made it unforgettable. Diane Franklin, who played Karen, later said the Pop the Cherry scene was emotionally hard to shoot, but the cast and crew handled it carefully, rare for a comedy that usually went for cheap jokes. Even the abortion scene was filmed seriously and without glamour, something no one expected in the genre. That refusal to make heartbreak look easy gave the film its lasting cult status, remembered more for its honesty than its raunchiness. Valley Girl tells the story of Julie, a stylish teenager from the safe suburbs of the San Fernando Valley, who unexpectedly falls for Randy, a rebellious punk from the rougher side of Los Angeles. Their relationship becomes a tug-of-war between her comfortable world and her craving for something wild, with judgmental friends, flashy mall parties, and nighttime drives through gritty city streets, shaping their love story like a modern Romeo and Juliet. What could have been a throwaway romance became something deeper thanks to Nicolas Cage, who brought raw emotion to Randy. The director saw it in his audition and cast him even though he wasn't yet famous. The soundtrack, handpicked by Martha Coolidge, became almost as legendary as the movie, full of new wave and punk songs that mirrored the story's clash of cultures. Deborah Foreman, who played Julie, was a real Valley girl, but had to tone down her accent to keep it real instead of cartoonish, and her natural charm made the film shine. Even the beach party scenes filmed on Malibu coast became iconic for showing the contrast between the bright Valley world and Randy's darker edge. It was shot quickly on a small budget, with lots of lines improvised by Cage that made it into the final cut. Everything about the movie felt gruff and real, and that rawness made it a cult favorite that still lasts. Hardbodies follow Scotty Palmer, a smooth-talking young guy who gets evicted and ends up living with 3 middle-aged divorcees desperate to feel young again. They pay Scotty to teach them how to meet women, which he sums up with his shallow but catchy rule, the bigger, better deal. Soon, the men are remaking themselves as beachside flirts, throwing wild parties and stumbling through aerobics classes and hookups, until Scotty's relationship with his girlfriend Christy makes him question whether empty flirting is enough. The film leaned hard into flashy fun, using real Malibu beachgoers as extras, many already half drunk, giving the shoot a wild, unpredictable energy. Roger Corman, the king of low-budget movies, helped fund it, and his fast, cheap style kept the actors working non-stop. One of the oddest part of the film's history was the casting of the all-female glam metal band Vixen, who appeared as Diaper Rash years before they got famous. Hardbodies was first made for the Playboy Channel, but was rejected for being too mild, only to get a full-tier release instead. What was meant to be a simple beach comedy became a late-night VHS favorite, remembered as a loud, sun-soaked snapshot of 1980s party life at its most raw.